This meeting is being recorded.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We can start now?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Okay. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's exciting session. This is T.R. Anand, Chair of the IoT Forum initiative of TIE Bangalore. And I welcome you all to this program. Thank you for logging in this evening. Very briefly, I would like to talk about the IoT Forum for 2 minutes and then hand over to the main speaker, Sanjeev Keskar, as well as the moderator for the program, Mr. Somasundaram. So just 2 words for those who do not know about the IoT Forum. The IoT Forum was started as an initiative way back in 2014 when IoT was still new, and we are now in our 8th year. We have progressed considerably from beyond just the preliminary, sensors and so on to a whole variety of topics, which we call the IoT Matrix. And in fact, we had a very successful IoT Matrix conference in December 2020. We have a variety of programs. Please visit the website or the new iotforindia.org. We have daily news, views, celebrations, awards, announcements, etc., which come to you on Telegram. So please join our group on Telegram. The Telegram ID to join will also be put out in the chat by our office colleagues. So please make a note of the same and join. I will not take more than another minute. This is one of our monthly programs as a part of one of the special interest groups as a SIG, as we call it. Okay, so we have about 10 SIG. You will find more about it, all about it on our website. What I would like to take 2 minutes right now is to talk about our flagship conference, the Matrix, we call it. IoT Matrix has become the Matrix. It is on May 24th and 25th. May 24th and 25th, 2-day conference. Entirely virtual. I don't think we are ready to do physical yet, maybe 2023. This conference, the theme has always been very relevant, very ambient, and very connected. And the theme, three main themes are there at the conference this time: digital next, sustainability or sustainable growth, and future tech. So please join us at this conference. Please watch out for announcements. The save the dates will go out to you soon. Okay. So with those words about about our activities and our upcoming flagship event, I now hand over to Somasundaram, who is the leader of our Design for Manufacturing Group, DFM. This is a very important topic in the context of Make in India, etc., and that's what you all hear about. So over to you, Soma, to conduct this session, introduce the speaker, and so on. Once again, a warm welcome to you all.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. TRA, and thanks for everybody who joined this August webinar. We have started a very important initiative at part of TIE IoT Forum. The head of TIE IoT Forum is Mr. T.R. Anand. And thanks, Mr. T.R. Anand, for giving a wonderful introduction to the IoT Forum and IoT Matrix. Today, we are focusing on Design for Manufacturing Special Interest Group, which we started actually 2 weeks back. And we want to give a thrust for design for manufacturing for products which in line with the Government of India initiatives about Atmanirbhar and other verticals. And we'll be focusing on a few demand clusters, namely semiconductors, electric vehicles, agriculture. We'll be going for defense and space, also for manufacturing, mining, metals, and logistics. This is what our core focus is. And this is basically the purpose of this SIG, Design for Manufacturing SIG, we'll be calling it DFM SIG, is to promote, mentor, and create new opportunities for startups. Because we felt this space is unaddressed. A lot of startups want to get into this, but they don't have somebody to handhold them to reach their end goal. So we want to be a great facilitator and accelerator in this process. Second, we want to promote a conducive and thriving environment to create a robust product startup ecosystem. See, there has been a lot of focus on software and other things which already is there, like Mr. TRA talked about IoT, embedded, other things. But there has not been a focused approach for products, especially design for products, which is very important for thriving Atmanirbhar and manufacturing in India. We want to have our contribution to help the startups into this. So what we plan to do, we'll be having an array of events for the product startups to educate them what the opportunities which are lying ahead and how they can capitalize on this. Number two, we want to make meaningful connections for potential startups to public sector units, private companies through our networks, and we'll have a rigorous program for this. Also, we want to nurture some selected 20 to 30 product startups annually for a focused mentoring and also help the startups realize their mission. So this is the first webinar we have planned in the Educating Startups initiative to understand what the potential lying. We're very thankful for Mr. Sanjeev Keskar, who has kindly agreed to mentor this initiative and also act as a lead mentor for semiconductors and embedded electronics. To give a brief about Mr. Sanjeev Keskar, he doesn't need an elaborate introduction because he's a who's who in the semiconductor industry. Mr. Sanjeev Keskar was earlier the managing director of Aero Electronics. He was also the past chairman of IESA, Indian Electronics and Semiconductor Association, and he is a doyen in the industry with several decades of experience. So without much ado, I would hand over to Mr. Sanjeev Keskar on the very important topic of enabling startups to reap the opportunities available in semiconductors as well as in embedded electronics. Over to you, Mr. Sanjeev Keskar. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Somsundaram, and thank you, TIE Bangalore. Thank you, IoT Forum, for giving me this opportunity to be here with you today. I would like to share my screen first. I hope all of you can see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I'm going to cover two topics. Firstly, the opportunities into semiconductor with the recent announcement of Government of India to support design link incentive. And secondly, about the opportunities in embedded electronics for startups. So these are the two sessions I will be covering over next 30 to 35 minutes. And then we will have another 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A. So let me start my presentation. Agenda is to really give you overview about electronics industry, then talk about the current announcement of design link incentive policy. I will take you through the details of that policy, then about the market opportunities and potential in semiconductor as well as in embedded electronics, and then support ecosystem available for startups, and also some of the plans which me, ATR sir and Somsundaram sir have discussed just last week. I will quickly share with you about them also. Most of you must have read an announcement by Ministry of Electronics and IT just 3 weeks back. They have come up with a sustainable electronics manufacturing and exports by 2026. Government is talking about reaching a $300 billion mark for electronics manufacturing by 25-26. In that $300 billion, we are expecting $180 billion worth of domestic production and $120 billion worth of exports. Now, I'm sure you must be aware there are many schemes rolled out in recent past by Government of India and MIT for promoting electronics manufacturing in India. There is a production link incentive, which is there for mobile phones, telecom, for air conditioners, LED, automotive, and it is linked for the production volumes, and there is an incentive under each scheme for manufacturing. There is a specs program for components manufacturing where 25% of your capex investment will be supported. There is a semiconductor wafer policy. There are three policies. One is for CMOS wafer fab, another is for display wafer fab, and third is for compound semiconductor fab. But today we are going to speak more about design link incentive program. And there is another policy, EMC 2.0, to create electronics manufacturing clusters across India. So I'm very sure with these well-planned, well-structured policies for components, for wafers, fabs, as well as for design, the entire ecosystem for semiconductor will get evolved over next couple of years in India. Just to have the graphical representation, last year, we had a total market for electronics of almost $120 billion, and exports were only $12 billion, and domestic manufacturing was $64 billion. Rest of it was finished good imports. When we are planning to reach at $300 billion mark of domestic manufacturing, we are expecting $180 billion of domestic manufacturing for local market and $120 billion of export. There is going to be mobile phone industry, which is going to lead the pack of electronics, but at the same time, PC tablets, industrial electronics, consumer electronics, automotive electronics, these will be another growth drivers for this $300 billion roadmap. Why semiconductor is a very big opportunity and why the startups in India now should focus for semiconductor design. Globally in 2020, semiconductor market was 440 billion. In 2021, it has crossed $500 billion mark. And by 2030, it is expected to cross 1 trillion mark. So it is one of the fastest growing industry globally. And if we have a multiplied effect for electronics product, then in 2020, electronic product market was more than $2 trillion. If we are talking about semiconductor in India, Indian semiconductor industry, which was at $15 billion in 2020, is expected to grow to $63 billion by 2026. Now, the challenge is today, the domestic semiconductor manufacturing is less than 1%. There are hardly any transistors, Zeners, or diodes we are manufacturing in India, but rest of the all ICs are imported today. Another important thing is if we analyze the global semiconductor scenario, then logic contributes almost 42%, memory is 26%, and then the discrete, analog, and other products contributes 32%. Now, the best part is 20% of design engineers working in VLSI chip design or in any sort of SoC development are Indians. But that talent is either working in a captive design center of a global design center of global companies or in design services companies doing global projects. There are very handful of fabless design companies today in India who are doing any chip design activity from India, or for global market. So the entire focus of this new scheme, which has been announced by government, DLI, is to really create that ecosystem of fabless design semiconductors in India. So total electronics design market in India is estimated at 35,000 crore in 2020, and it's growing at 15% CAGR. Let's talk about now this design link incentive scheme. As I mentioned, the objective behind this scheme is to nurture 100 startups in semiconductor fabless design. And government really is expecting 20 fabless startups companies to achieve cumulative turnover of 200 million plus in next 5 years. This is going to definitely enable us for the import substitution, because most of the IPs, though they are getting designed in India, we are still importing them as that IP value doesn't get recognized in India. We just get jobs and patents are filed outside. The IP value get recognized with the respective global company. And government is also creating a lot of infrastructure, incubation centers. CDAC is going to be implementation agency for this scheme, who is going to provide EDA tools to these startups. So it's a very well-structured, well-programmed scheme. I'll share more details in subsequent slide. Now, who are the beneficiaries of this DLI scheme? Firstly, startups. Secondly, MSMEs. And one important point, this scheme is for Indian companies. So a proprietor or the owner or more than 50% of the share of these companies has to be with the Indian resident or Indian citizen. That's a very clear guideline. Means this scheme is not for the foreign companies. It is targeted for Indian startups. It is targeted for Indian MSMEs defined as per the FDI policy. Now the target segments for which this design link incentive scheme is targeted. This is targeted for manufacturing and sales of fabless semiconductor products like ICs, SoCs, IPs, which can be developed for semiconductors, and also semiconductor link design. And what all it will cover? It will cover R&D manpower cost. It will cover ED and CAD tools and all other tools cost. By the way, CDAC is going to provide you all the key tools like Cadence, Synopsys, and Mentor Graphics. But for your project, if you need any special tool or special software, then you can buy under this scheme and then you can claim as a reimbursement under this program. Also, the hardware and software licensing fee, IPR and patent copyright for R&D, prototyping and volume production, silicon bring up, test characterization validation. So all these things are captured under the incentives offered under DLI. Now let's talk about what is the incentive one can expect from the DLI scheme. Firstly, this policy is open for application for 3 years. Starting from 1st January 22, you can apply under this policy for next 3 years. Secondly, there will be a 50% incentive given with a max cap of 15 crore. That means if you are going to invest 30 crore rupees, then you will get 50%, which is 15 crore rupees from government under this program as a reimbursement. That means you have to first spend 30 crore and then by showing the proof of your expenditure, you will get the 50% incentive. The best part is there is no equity you have to share. There is no other parameters for eligibility. What you have to do, government has created a website called India Semiconductor Mission. You have to just go on India Semiconductor Mission website, apply online, and then as and when you spend your money in this startup, you have to just show the proof of your investment and you will start getting 50% reimbursement of your expenditure. So it's a very simple, very well-structured scheme to support chip development, SoC development, and also IP core development related to semiconductors. Now, the beauty of this scheme is there is something called as deployment link incentive. So once you are, let's say, a fabless SoC or chip is ready, you are working with any global foundries, maybe TSMC, UMC, or anyone, and getting that chip manufactured. And when you start selling that chip, you will get 6 to 4% of sales turnover incentive under this program called deployment link incentive. It is part of same DLI scheme. And then there is a cap of 30 crore rupees. So let's say you start making revenue of the silicon what you have developed, you will get incentive maximum up to 30 crore rupees. So if really one company takes full advantage of this scheme, then they can expect 15 crore rupees for the design and 30 crore rupees linked to their sales incentive. So total 45 crore rupees can be expected by startup or MSME under this DLI scheme. CDAC is going to be implementation and governing agency. So once you make an application on the India Semiconductor Mission website, it will be CDAC and Ministry of Electronics and IT who will be approving your application. And once it is approved, you can really get started investing into your program and then start claiming the reimbursement. So it's a very well-structured scheme. I really wish that we have lot of fabless semiconductor ecosystem developed in India. Till now, we have worked in a global multinationals to develop VLSI chip. Till now, we have worked in a design services companies to develop global chips. Now, an entrepreneur or someone who has worked in an industry for 10, 15 years can really take a risk and start some own SoC development activity under DLI program. Okay, this is the first session of the DLI scheme. After my second portion of embedded electronics, and after this presentation is over, I'll be very happy to take any questions you may have. So as Mr. Vinay has mentioned, you can post your questions in the chat box, and I will definitely take most of the questions based on the time permit after the presentation is over. Now let's move to the second topic, electronics. It is a very critical industry for India. On one hand, the consumption of electronics is growing very fast. Also, as the announcement by Ministry of Electronics, our ESDM market is going to be, particularly electronics manufacturing market is going to be 300 billion by 2026. Now, same as semiconductor industry, even in electronics industry, our total local value addition is just 17%, less than 17%. Even let's say if we talk about production link incentive for mobile phones, it is great. So many mobile phones are now getting manufactured in India, Samsung, Apple, and even all the local brands. But point is how much local validation we are getting. Entire CKD is coming to India, kit is coming to India, and we are just doing SMT assembly. So it gives us hardly 10 to 12% value recognition. And that is the biggest challenge today for electronics industry in India, that we have to improve our local value addition. If we analyze value addition of any electronic product, then 40% value is into electronic components, 30 to 40% value is into IP and technology, and EMS activity, packaging, testing, and all other activities is less than 20%. Now, our entire focus today is only on EMS activity. There are few sectors like industrial electronics where the designs are also happening in India, and most of the manufacturing is also happening in India. But the challenge is component ecosystem. The 40% component, if we break down further, 25% is semiconductor, which 100% is imported. Then we have passive components, we have connectors. Under passive, we have capacitors, resistors, relays, inductors, and then there comes bare PCB. So our import dependency is way too high, and that's the reason almost 80% plus components are getting imported today, and that is getting reflected into this 17% value addition. So our biggest challenge for electronics is to improve local value addition. Now, electronics manufacturing really help us to grow and contribute to our GDP. Means government has a vision of $5 trillion economy. Electronic can really contribute 6% with $300 billion local manufacturing of electronics. Currently in India, it is less than 4%, but in countries like Taiwan, Korea, China, it contributes more than 10%. Also, from the national security point of view, electronics is a very important sector. Your entire smart grid or energy grid or your defense electronics, we have to be truly Atmanirbhar on this technology. We can't depend on foreign technologies for smart grid or electronics. Because if your grid is controlled on DWDM system from China, then what security you have? So from the national security point of view, electronics is a very, very important sector that we have to be Atmanirbhar, at least on some critical areas. And also it can create 2 million jobs. This industry has a potential. Once we grow to $300 billion, it is going to create 2 million jobs for our engineers. We have seen industry revolution from steam engines to electricity to electronics and computer. And now we are talking about industry 4.0, where we are talking about artificial intelligence, IoT, we are talking about machine learning and robotics. So it is going to be evolving in a very big way, industry 4.0. And that is definitely the IoT a domain is going to bring very large opportunity for startups and MSMEs. So really speaking, what is IoT? Today we live in two different worlds. On one hand, you have information technology where there is a World Wide Web and you have server farms, you have data centers. And on other side, you have operational technology where we talk about sensors, we are talking about processing, we are talking about software and hardware designs. So really speaking, the domain knowledge, if we look at of the embedded electronics, is very high on the design part of electronics, but very low when it comes to the data centers and World Wide Web. And same thing about information technology, they have a very little understanding of embedded electronics. So IoT is really a conduit which connects these two things. Everything is getting smart, everything is getting connected. And that's the reason IoT is a very large opportunity, because it is going to be everywhere. If we look at all the verticals, right from consumer electronics, where all home appliances, everything is going to be connected either by Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or by LoRa. And then we have transport and mobility, where GSM modules will be used for tracking, for OBD2, for your ADAS and all emerging new applications. Medical electronics and health is another patient monitoring system, and all other medical gadgets will be connected. Building infrastructure, your HVAC, your electricity, your smart energy meters, everything will be connected. Utility meters will be connected. And then the smart city and smart industries. So it's going to be across all verticals. When we talk about $300 billion industry for by 2026, which are those growth drivers which are going to drive this growth from 120 billion to $300 billion in next 5 years? So when it comes to automotive electronics, we already migrated from BS4 to BS6 emission norms. Earlier, a capacitor discharge ignition unit used to be used on two-wheelers for your electronic ignition. Now everything has been migrated to electronic fuel injection. Same way, ADAS is coming into four-wheelers, infotainment, LED lighting is happening, and the biggest revolution is going to come from electric vehicle, where we are going to witness motor control, battery management system, DC to DC converter, charging stations. These are very, very large opportunities in automotive electronics. When it comes to industrial and consumers, smart grid, smart energy meter, government is talking about installing 200 million smart energy meters over next 3 to 4 years. Solar pumps for agriculture, solar inverters is another emerging area under industrial. When we talk about consumers, mobile phones, TVs, home appliances, they are going to drive this growth to $300 billion. Talking about telecom and networking, 4G to 5G migration, 5G is going to be huge infrastructure implementation happening over next 2-3 years. Our National Optical Fiber Network program of GPON going to connect entire rural India with GPON fiber connectivity. Data centers is going to be big, and Wi-Fi networks is going to be big driver for telecom and networking. And the smart city project driven by government, it will create a lot of opportunities for IoT and connectivity. So these are some of the top growth drivers which are going to take us to $300 billion in next 4 to 5 years. Now, why we need a high value added ecosystem? The point which I shared on the first point, that current local value addition is less than 17% in India in electronics. Now imagine if we are going to do $300 billion worth of manufacturing, and if our local value addition remains at 17%, then it is going to be disastrous. We are going to have only $51 billion recognized for India. Rest to $50 billion, still we will be depending on component imports and technology imports. So that's not really going to help. So our focus has to be on high value added ecosystem. Definitely with this semiconductor wafer fab policy, display wafer fab policy, specs program for component manufacturing, we expect that in next 2 to 3 years, the 40% components which goes into this value chain, at least 15 to 20% we will become Atmanirbhar by local production of components. So I really wish that the policies, though it has come late, but those are very well planned, well structured policies. In wafer fab policy, government is going to fund 50% incentive for CMOS wafer fab and for display wafer fab, which is huge outlay. Means in a $3 to $4 billion proposal of CMOS wafer fab, government is going to fund $2 billion, which is amazing. Also, same thing with compound semiconductor for your photonics, for your sensors, MEMS sensors, for RF, and for ATMP and OSAT. Government is going to support 30% under compound semiconductor program. So I'm very confident that over next 2 to 3 years, we will see component manufacturing system is going to evolve. But the role what startups and MSMEs have to play is really into IP and product innovation. I think we can really take advantage of good parties in electronics. In every vertical, there is a new technology coming every 2 years, every 3 years. So our startups and MSME should actually focus on these emerging opportunities. Industrial IoT is a domain where MSMEs and startups can have a very big play, because every industry is going to need a customized solution, and that customized solution no big company can develop. It is the play for startups and MSMEs. So actually, this slide, I want everyone to focus on how to really we can create in building IP and technology, because that contributes almost 40% of this ecosystem. And today, most of the products technology, we are, though we have so many captive design centers of global electronics companies, again, except for industrial domain where we have unique product like inverters and energy meter, which are really made as per the India specs. I see in consumer electronics, in medical electronics, or in telecom networking, our dependency on imported technology is very high. So we must start focusing on developing IPs and technology so that our 17% value addition in electronics can really increase to at least 50% and more. Because unless we have more than 50% value addition, our electronic import or our import bill for electronic components is going to be really more than oil and gas import. So it's a very serious issue, and we as a design engineers have to play our role to create IP and technology in India. So what IoT Forum or organization like TIE, we are trying to focus. We are definitely going to create a mentor pool, because one thing we realize that most of the startups have a challenge of technical issues, because when they are working on any platform of these big semiconductor companies, there is hardly any support available for startups and MSME. So at IoT Forum, we are internally discussing how we can create a mentor pool which can support startups and MSME to solve their technical issues. But at the same time, there are so many good center of excellences or incubation centers which have been invested by Government of India, be it Ministry of Electronics and NASSCOM, who has created a large ESDM center of excellence at HSR layout. Earlier it was in Diamond District, now moved to HSR layout. ITIA has created an incubation center. And now I'm going to talk about one excellent program by STPI Bangalore, which is a IoT Open Lab, which they have set up in collaboration with Arrow Electronics. So I have already discussed about the opportunities in electronics for startups, so I will not repeat that. But the challenges for startup is primarily selecting the right platform. Many times I have seen that the startups, after investing their time, energy, money for year and two of efforts, they realize that the product what they have developed, either it is not meeting the end market specification, or commercially it is very, very expensive. So with a global competition, they cannot sell that product. So on the day one, if they get a right advocacy, what is the right platform which can make techno commercially the right solution? I think that is something missing today, and we are going to address that. Sample support, technical support, mentoring, that is also we are going to address at the TIE Forum and IoT Forum. There are labs, as I mentioned, NASSCOM has a lab, ITIA has created an incubation center, and I'm going to talk about IoT Open Lab. So these are something which we are going to focus, and also the seed funding. So if we really are able to address these challenges for startups, I think creating a very good ecosystem for IP and technology creation, both in fabless semiconductor as well as embedded electronics, is easily possible. So let me just quickly share with you about the IoT Open Lab set up by STPI and Arrow in Electronic City, Bangalore. They have invested almost $1 million in this lab. There is a technical team available to support handholding, advocacy, as well as technical mentoring full time. You can reach out to this lab and use the test facility, take a technical advice from the technical team, and do your prototyping or you do your development at this lab facility. It is a world-class facility, has been created with an investment of more than $1 million at Electronic City, Bangalore. And the engagement models are also very simple. You can have a complete package model where you can access this lab anytime and every time. And there is associate membership model. If you just want to use some test equipment, then you can pay one time 10,000 rupees and available 5 slots of 3 hours where you can do your work, take the advocacy. And also, if you want more slots, you can pay more and you can avail the facility. Similarly, NASSCOM facility is excellent in HSR layout. So I want you to really leverage these COEs or incubation centers set up in Bangalore, as well as I want you to really go after the DLI scheme, Design Link Incentive Scheme, and really venture into some chip design activity, because 15 crore design incentive plus 30 crore of deployment link incentive is a fantastic program. And I really encourage all of you to take advantage of this DLI scheme, as well as if you need any support in this embedded electronics development, then please reach out to TIE Forum and IoT Forum, and we will ensure that you get required mentoring support from IoT Forum. So now, friends, I will stop here. And if you have any question, my contact details are shared here. And you also have contact of Mr. Anand and TIE Secretary team, Mr. Vinay, as well as Mr. Vijeta. You can reach out to any one of us and we will see how we can support you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Sanjeev, for a wonderful presentation. I feel it has been, it is very informative and definitely enable the product startups to get into this space of semiconductor and embedded electronics. And as I see, it's a huge opportunity. And also, you know, it has been in the news that a lot of Ola was not able to deliver because of they're not getting the semiconductors equipment. Similarly, a lot of car companies are not able to deliver. So there is definitely a lot of push from the government to get into this space. And definitely, I think the startups will greatly benefit by leveraging the experience and the mentorship what you have provided. And to give a brief about the mentorship, yeah, at TIE Bangalore and IoT, we are developing a mentor pool to cater to the startup ecosystem, so that they can probably we can nurture the startups and get get the next stage. So now I would request Mr. Vinay Dora, who has coordinated at TIE, to read the questions which I got from the participants, and I would request Mr. Sanjeev for his valuable comments on that. Over to you, Vinay. Hello.
Yeah. So I see that Pooja has asked, are MSSB also eligible for the DLI scheme, or is it only for tech startups or startups?
No, this DLI scheme is eligible for all startups and MSMEs, as I mentioned in my presentation. And even if it is a SME, you can apply for DLI. Okay, small and medium industries can also apply for DLI scheme incentive.
Right. And Swapnil wants to know, is it only for SoC, ASIC, or embedded boards as well, the scheme that you were?
So right now there is a bit of ambiguity here. I attended CDAC and MIT session on DLI scheme, and I posed the same question. And that time, CDAC reply was it is targeted only for the chip design and fabless semiconductor activity. But then Mr. Saurabh Gaur, Secretary of MIT, was also on that session, and he told that people should make an application, and if they find a merit in that application, then even the embedded electronics proposals will also be reviewed and considered under this program. But in the current policy document, it is not very clear. They have mentioned that semiconductor-like designs, but then whether embedded electronics specifically will be supported, that is not clearly mentioned. But we can reach out to CDAC and get the clarification. But I think if the program is by MSME and startup, we should explore.
Sure.
As of now, there is not a very clear clarity on this point.
Sure. Akhil, I see that you raised your hand and you have a couple more questions as well. Would you like to share?
Hi. Yeah, thank you. So my question is in relation to the numbers that Sanjeev was talking about earlier. So I was just doing a quick calculation. I realized that a startup needs to raise a minimum of 30 crores. I'm talking about in terms of taking full benefit of the DLI scheme. They need to raise around 30 crores. That's close to $4 million even before applying for the scheme. That's one eligibility criteria, and they need to then have a revenue of up to 650 crores within 5 years to again get the reimbursement. So my first question is it a reasonable expectation for a company in semiconductor industry to have a revenue of $90 million from the stage of designing the process? Second question is, are there any example of companies who have done this earlier? And the third question is, have startups raised up till $4 million without a prototype in hand?
Okay, Akhil, good question. So 30 crore or 4 million is a max cap. You can have a proposal of 10 crore or even 5 crore. Okay,
No,
and still
my question is, yes, please. Sorry, I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
Sorry. So your question is whether it is easy for a startup to invest 30 crore. But you can send a proposal on India Semiconductor Mission website even for 10 crore and get a 5 crore as a 50% reimbursement. So it's not necessary that you have to submit a proposal for 30 crore. Am I clear on that point?
Yeah, Akhil.
Okay.
So my question is a little different. What I want to understand, I understand the fact that we can have a proposal of lesser than 30 crores as well. But the thing is, when you just say about like a 5 crore, proposal. So from there to reach a revenue order of $90 million and all that. So that's also a subsequent question, because when we talk about a scheme, we would want to take the maximum benefit. So I wanted to understand how reasonable is this scheme in terms of being able to do what they are looking for, is where
Sure.
I was a little concerned.
No, your concern is valid, Akhil. Definitely to reach to a revenue. Again, 30 crore is a max cap. So you may do, let's say, 100 crore in revenue. And on 100 crore, you will get 4 crore as an incentive. So it's not that there is a threshold that you to really eligible for deployment link incentive, you have to cross that 30 crore incentive mark. You will get incentive for lower volumes also.
No, I think you're getting my question wrong. What I mean to ask is, see, the thing is, if we lower the amount, then being able to successfully deliver the product will also become an unreasonable expectation, because I think all those numbers are very, very, I think justified for doing the product development. You need that kind of funding. So that's why I'm asking, like, if you say that somebody creates a very small proposal, of a very small amount, then will the product be feasible in that case?
Agree. Yeah, at least we have something which is not asking startup to share the equity, share some this thing. I'm very sure as we move along, and if industry starts giving such feedbacks, Mighty will amend the policy, because ultimate aim is to make 100 successful startups. So if we have to fine tune this policy further, where we see that industry is facing challenge, I'm very sure Mighty will amend the policy moving forward. As of now, I have just presented what is there in the DLI policy.
We'll go on to the next question. Yeah. We're done with your
Before
question?
that, 1 minute, Vinay, what I would like to add, I do know the type of concerns emerging due to the investment required. I think that is why TIE is preparing a good mentor pool to handle startups, because it is not like a software startup. Obviously, a product startup requires a bit of investment and how to pull that. So this has been identified by Mr. Sanjeev also, that what are the main requirements of a startup? They require seed funding to start in the first place. They require a minimum capital. Then they need a correct mentorship. And also you touched upon the type of lab facilities available, like STPA, IoT lab. So this will answer a lot of questions. It's a very good question by Mr. Rakil. And if you start engaging with TIE, most of your concerns will get addressed. Because today it was an introductory program on what is the potential available in semiconductors and the embedded electronic space. But definitely I would like to see your interest, and then we have to get engaged with TIE more to reap the full benefits. Yeah, over to Vinay. Yeah.
Great. So we have Prem Prasad who has raised his hand. So let me just ask him to unmute so he can ask his question. Prem?
Good evening, sir. Thanks a lot for an excellent. Thanks for allowing me to ask the question, and thanks for an excellent presentation. Sir, actually, I'm working on a project to make certain small components of quantum computing hardware in the country. And there are many quantum computing startups, but most of them they're actually in software. Does making of quantum computing hardware, we're planning to make the hardware that is needed, the subsystems that are needed to build quantum computers, not directly the quantum computing hardware as such. So, like the cryogenic systems, do you have any such? Does this scheme cover these technologies as well, which are quite relatable to technology, semiconductors, but not directly, but do not fall directly into semiconductors?
I'm not very clear. Your question is related to components availability or hardware?
This is hardware. This is hardware. So manufacturing hardware that is needed for building quantum computing ecosystem in the country.
So for hardware manufacturing, there are a lot of EMS facilities available. More than 100 EMS plants are available across India.
Okay.
And they produce right from very small prototyping quantity
Okay.
till you have people like Foxconn and Flextronic who do a very large scale manufacturing. So with related to hardware manufacturing, what is the exact challenge you are facing?
No, the challenge I'm not facing any challenge, sir, but I just wanted to know whether this particular scheme that you're talking about, the design linked incentive scheme, does it cover developing quantum computing hardware in this country?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think the first question was on the similar lines. As of now, there is not a very good clarity whether the DLI scheme will support hardware designs.
Okay.
They have just mentioned that semiconductor link development. So actually speaking, embedded electronics is a semiconductor link development,
Yeah.
but we have to really get that clarity from CDAC, whether they will support hardware development under DLI scheme.
Thank you, sir. Thanks.
Thank you.
I see Swapnil has a question on, Swapnil, should I unmute you? You have something on the tape out costs, right? During one of the slides you had asked us questions. Okay, I think Swapnil.
Vinay, you may read out the question yourself, please.
Yeah, no, his question was around the tape out costs, but I don't know in what context he has asked that question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe semiconductor tape out related. Frankly, I'm not domain expert on that front.
Sure.
But we'll connect you with some expert who is into actually chip design.
Sure.
By the way, by profession, I'm a sales guy. So I'm not really a design engineer, but you can drop me an email and I will connect you with some right expert
Sure.
who can help you on tape out cost.
Okay. And I see a lot of questions around the funding space. I just want to let the audience know that we have monthly funding workshops and pitch events, thanks to our partner Mojodomo. We bring in curated investors who listen to different domain startup presentations. So every month, so we keep the audience posted if they're looking at VC funding as well. And I see people sharing. Also, there were certain other questions that I noticed. One is, is this also open for non-resident Indians and OICs, people of Indian origin?
So they have to definitely have a India registered company, and the Indian entity should hold more than 51% majority stake. Okay, unless it's an Indian entity, they are not eligible. A completely foreign company or NRI company is not eligible to participate in DLI scheme. 51% ownership has to be with an Indian citizen.
Right. And some of them also wanted to go through the presentation again. So it's okay if we share with the audience the presentation. And
absolutely, I will email it to Vinay and Vijeta, and you can mail this presentation to anyone who is requesting for that.
Sure. And we have a question that just came now from Vishnu and Sanjeev also. So Vishnu wants to know what is the minimum revenue turnover threshold to avail the DLI scheme.
So in the policy document, they have not mentioned any revenue threshold there. Okay, they have just mentioned the maximum cap, that 15 crore will be for design link incentive, 50% or 15 crore. And similarly for deployment link incentive, the max cap is 30 crore. There is no minimum cap mentioned.
Sure. So what we do is we'll also email the presentation to the attendees and also provide them with a link to join our Design for Manufacturing community so they can keep sharing about their various questions. I see somebody who mentioned, Sanjeev had mentioned that expanding an Indian company to Canada using the DLI scheme. Is there some kind of a global accelerator partnerships that the Indian government has around the DLI scheme?
So as of now in DLI policy, nothing has been mentioned, but MIT is really trying to help Indian companies to participate in global projects and global programs. And there is no scheme as such, but definitely if there is some IP which needs, which has a potential with the global customers, there can be some outreach program where MIT can help.
Sure. And we have Vijay who has raised his hand. So is there some question you have in mind?
Yeah, this is Vijay here. Just a quick question. It is related to the previous question as well. So if we have a consortium of from a different region, so to start up a new firm in India, so would that be applicable to take it forward in terms of technology transfer?
Absolutely, as long as it is an India registered company and majority stake is with Indian citizen.
Okay, I hope the question is clarified. Let's see if there are any more questions, thoughts that we also have quite a few IoT forum leaders here. And there's one more question that from Ramanath. Is there any IP standard cell library requirement for which the DLI can be developed towards?
So again, there are no clear guidelines as such, but you you have to really come up with a business plan where you see a potential and you have a customer commit for that type of SOC or that type of any IP you are creating. What government is going to do is they are going to support you with the EDA tools through CDAC, and then if there is any special software tool requires to be purchased, that can be part of your reimbursement.
Right. So I see that many of them found it useful. I see Mr. Suresh and the others have found the session quite useful. So if there are no more questions, what we can do is we can request some of the IoT forum leaders also. I see Mr. Ravi Chivukola, who has asked if the thresholds, wanted to pitch in around the discussions. If the threshold, are the discussions around minimum or maximum threshold for investment. So Mr. Ravi, would you like to unmute yourself and share your thoughts as well?
Hi, I had a question actually. So for the component manufacturing, is there any support for that, any infrastructure for component manufacturing in India?
Absolutely. There are 3 schemes, I will say, available. Firstly, the EMC 2.0, under which government is going to create a common infrastructure or common facility center. And there will be these clusters coming up across India. Second program is called SPECS. Under SPECS program, whatever capex you are investing for component manufacturing, you will get 25% incentive of that capex. And there the threshold is 5 crore rupees. The minimum investment has to be 5 crore rupees. But if you are setting up, let's say, capacitor manufacturing or resistor manufacturing or any other passive component or active or maybe connector, you will get 25% of your capex investment under the SPECS program. And the third policy is about compound semiconductor, where if you are going to set up, let's say, a sensor manufacturing or your photonics or RF components or any ATMP facility, then you will be getting 30% of your investment as an incentive. Again, then there is no cap. It can, for ATMP OSAT, it is 50 crore and for compound semiconductor, it is 100 crore, but there is no max cap again. So you will get 30% under compound semiconductor policy. So these are the 3 policies which are there to support component manufacturing.
Okay, thank you.
This is Ravi here. Sorry, I was on mute at that time. The question was very simple. It's that I think there seems to be a confusion around whether it is a minimum investment required from a startup or a SME or the cap to which the government is ready to subsidize. Usually, whenever there's a subsidy, it's usually a cap, not a floor. So I just wanted to get that clarity.
Okay. So Mr. Ravi, it's like this. You can have a proposal right from 5 crore to even 100 crore. You may want to scale up in a big way in chip design activity. The outflow is limited up to 15 crore. So let's say if your proposal is 50 crore, still you will end up getting only 15 crore. So there is a cap at that 50% or 15 crore.
That's exactly what I wanted to clarify, because the discussion earlier seemed to indicate that it was a floor. No, usually it's a cap. Subsidies are always capped.
Yeah, it's a cap.
So we're at 7 now with Mr. Sanjeev's permission. If you'd like to spend a few more minutes, we could take a couple more questions.
Yeah, I will be happy if there are any more questions.
Yeah,
No
I
issues.
think, can we have something from the IoT forum, Mr. Arvind?
Yes.
Then go over to Vijay can detail about the TIE in this. Yeah.
Yes. So we will just inform Mr. Arvind. Mr. Arvind is here.
Yeah, I think all I will say is that this is a long haul. It's a marathon race. But the geopolitical situation, the splinternet with China, Taiwan, US, has created a very large momentum for alternative centers of manufacturing, design, and production. Now, we can't get to 4 nanometer, etc. That is not there, but we have very good firmware design. We are very good at the larger fabs and nodes. And we have about 20 fabulous design companies. We are doing a lot of work. 5G gives a chance. So without trying to get to the leading edge, if we get to the bulk of the industry where there is small components, and the volume is not millions of chips, but slightly less, we can build an ecosystem. This is how